I see so many people misuse thinking and reasoning, and so today we will define and differentiate between the two so we can better understand thinking and reasoning, but also intelligence as a whole. Let's start with thinking. How do we even define thinking? Well, we actually can't, and that's the entire point. You see, thinking is so much more ambiguous and equivocal than reasoning because there's so many different ways to think. So, for example, thinking is the consideration and manipulation of mental representations. But that's not enough, because thinking is also recalling, imagining, associating, simulating, analyzing, generating, and creating thoughts in the mind. It's so much more of a broad mental process where thinking can be both structured or unstructured, conscious or subconscious, intuitive or logical. The whole point is that there are no set rules or guidelines for thinking. So, some examples of thinking would be brainstorming, comprehending, sense making, drawing association from multiple ideas. The concept of introspection requires thinking, imagination requires thinking, considering various variables require thinking, ascribing symbolism, and most creative thinking and creative thought is from pure thinking. Thinking, if I had to sort of pin it down, is all about free flowing flexibility. Now for reasoning. Reasoning is much more easier and simple to define. Reasoning involves drawing inferences or conclusions from premises, evidence, and assumptions. It follows rules of logic such as deduction, induction, and abduction. I actually will make a video explaining the three, so don't worry about it for now. So reasoning is all about organizing and structuring your thoughts. It's about casting judgment upon those thoughts, evaluating your thinking, proving your thinking, and operating based on rules and principles. So examples of reasoning would be general problem solving, evaluating logic, pattern recognition, and narrowing down an option, therefore a conclusion. So becoming a detective and trying to figure out who the culprit is, for example, would be reasoning. So now, how does thinking and reasoning intertwine? For starters, reasoning cannot occur without thinking, but you can think without reasoning. And a lot of cognitive activities we partake in require both, but we will always lean one way or the other depending on the person and the circumstance of the situation. So let's talk about the concept of planning. The thinking, when it comes to planning, comes from the process of planning it. So it's about accounting for the different variables, thinking about the psyche of the people involved, thinking about what could go wrong and what could go right. It's about compiling and comprehending all the crucial information required to succeed. The reasoning in planning comes from the organization of the information, sequencing the information, and putting your thoughts into an actionable plan. Some plans may require more thought, while others may require more reasoning. So, same concept and same logic can be applied to strategy. So, strategy applies the same thing. It's about how we use it, though. So, for example, one can be more than the other. Let's look at Lelouch from Code Geass. Lelouch's strategies require much more thought because he has more control of the situation. Therefore, he has more flexibility. He has more room for creativity. He sets the structure and the conditions of the strategies himself. He formulates every single aspect of the strategy based on his own thinking because he has, number one, the ability, but the circumstance of Code Geass being in a war, which is much more flexible and gives you much more freedom of thought, gives you more reign to think. Of course, he has to reason as well. Every plan and strategy requires both. But remember, it's all about what dominates. So the reasoning in Lelouch's strategies would be how he allocates his resources, how he organizes his troops, and how he executes the strategy itself in a logical manner. But his thinking is so much more apparent because he has to think about what the enemy commander would do, what Schneisel will do, what Mao will do, and he has to create a strategy based on those ambiguous, equivocal, and free-flowing thoughts of behavior. So where someone like Akeyama Shinichi from a manga called Liar Game, he's governed by rules and principles for each game he plays. He has to reason much more than think because he's forced to reason under conditions, rules, and principles. A game like Bid Poker has rules and logical sequences that other players take So Akiyama has to directly reason from that. He can't do what Lelouch does. He can't create his own structure. He can't create his own guidelines and win conditions because the win conditions are already set for him because it's a game and those games have rules and logical sequences. He has to organize his thoughts accordingly and reason via deduction, induction, or abduction much more than Lelouch does. And so that brings me to my final point. One is not greater than the other. It simply depends on the person, their style, and the circumstances they're in. I hope this helped, and if you want more content like this, let me know.